Hello and welcome to Tug of Heart. This is Lori. Memento mori means to remember death. This is a phrase that comes from a Russian existentialist, Nikolai Berdyaev. And what does this have to do with our topic today? We'll get to that in a minute. We are talking today about what it means to stand with humanity. The reason that I had quoted that to start is because Leroy had talked about standing with humanity. He mentioned it to me during the week. Hi, Leroy. How you doing?
Hey, Lori. How are you?
Very good. And when you mentioned this to me, it came right, possibly on the same day that I had heard Putin mention that the highest act of man, the highest good, is laying down our life for another. This has nothing to do with politics, but just to talk about what is meant by that. When he says that, is that the highest good? And the same day you had said the importance of standing with humanity, which got me thinking about like reconciling one with the other or getting rid of one, because they don't line up to me to hear both of these. Memento mori means to remember death. And it's this idea, Leroy, that like the attitude toward all men would change if we regarded them as though they were dying, which we are. When you think about previously, when we spoke about time, it's going in one direction, and that we know where that direction leads to, and that measure of time ends with death. And the thing is, it's about it has to do with like determining our relationship to another person in the light of death. The light of death. What does that mean? I also had said the show before last, or somewhere around there, that a dying person calls for like a special kind of feeling that it brings out in other people. And I think that I would start there, because right now what we're faced with that made you say that is that there are indeed people dying presently. But this is something we should remember every day, because everybody kind of is headed in that direction. Now, when I think of humanity, I'll start with this, and then I'll turn it over to you to at least introduce your thoughts about it. Humanity to me, or at least the aim of humanity, is to make ourselves better and one another better, simply with communion to one another, communication, interaction. And we reach the fulfillment and like the dignity of what it means to be a human. What does it mean to be a human? By entering relations with others. And in this sense, if you were to lay your life down for another, I think what that actually means is to give ourselves away for the sake of others, not simply for the gain of others. And I'll start with that, because I kind of wanted to talk to you about what you meant, and maybe you can help me work out the two of these.
Okay. I spent some time thinking about this, and I'm not here to instruct or guide, but for me, I prayed about it. And while I was doing so, I immediately found myself greater than me, but I found myself finding it impossible to pray for a party.
Right.
And
I agree with that.
The reason being is I'm extremely saddened. There are people that receive medals, and they adorn their lapel with medals, just lots of medals, lots of achievements, lots of accomplishments that aren't necessarily aligned with their own will.
Wow.
Or their own ambition. How many people conquered for a king, and people would say, man, what an amazing general, what an amazing soldier, what an amazing colonel. But nobody asked if that's what they felt was right. So so as I sat here thinking warm and fuzzies, I couldn't just do it for one side because I feel for the lives lost on both sides.
Me too.
And I feel for those that are exercising obedience and loyalty. And these are all things that we say, man, they're just extraordinary qualities. And yet the world would shun, rebuke the effort, because it's polarizing to the devastation we see, right? But it's no less sad. And so I sat here and I see all these things and stand with Ukraine. No, I to me something says stand with humanity, because I'm saddened for all the people drawn into this, affected by this, that literally it's not their will.
No,
it's not their decision, but what they are is loyal.
Right.
And people say, how can you be loyal? I mean, that's just crazy. Can't you see what you're doing? Military personnel are taught not to think for themselves. They work as a unit. They are a cog in a wheel. And they act without hesitation. They execute orders. And you know what?
Yeah.
To really stand with humanity, you have to stand for them, because while they're being loyal and they're doing what's right, and yet it could be considered wrong.
That's tremendously right. That's actually like a little bit mind-blowing here. I'm having a profound moment. When you talk about a person who's gotten medals, I've never even thought of this. I'm going to get a little choked up because it's heartbreaking to me. I have a hard time siding with anybody in this also, because the fact of the matter is both sides are human, period. And one of my beliefs, which does not fare well with a lot of people, is as soon as we call somebody inhumane and we say this person is a bug, a monster, a whatever, and I'm not going to defend anybody's behavior. What's going on is horrific and wrong and not humane. It's inhumane behavior. But when you say this about the person, and we say it from a stance that we are not that, so we can say objectively that they are, I always feel like the risk we run is we've now said, this is a monster, we are human, and we've removed a kind of alertness in ourselves that, no, this is a human, and we also are capable of that. It's good for us to know the extremes that humans are capable of, or we will not guard ourselves and guard one another's hearts. I'm sounding inspired because I never thought of this till just now when you were saying this. So back to the medals, and that this guy is very good at achieving something that's just not his ambition. We also have to recognize that's because that's an office, not a human. And it's that office that did get those medals. And it's funny that you mentioned loyalty, because if I had to, off the top of my head, I had to start naming things that matter in a relationship when I was talking about being in communion with one another. Woo, kind of idealistic what I started off with, right? The dignity, the humanity. And there, as soon as you talk about humanity, you don't get too many steps without reaching into societies where a lot of this happens. And loyalty is huge in moving societies forward, in moving even two men forward together. And the other is a cooperation. These are gifts when utilized correctly. Things get very complicated, and we're very good at messing them up as humans. We make mistakes. It's no more than you and I being children, and it's so much more. as children, we have hit one another. So we know we too are capable of it. That was max opposition and violence we could inflict at that age. So how much more can somebody with experience and the means do to one another? That's a little bit of a tangent, just that's tremendous what you said. I actually want you to, if you can, speak more about how we can kind of transition back to the good of loyalty to humanity, but we still do have responsibilities that we only escape with death in life, unfortunately. And to be fair, it's no different as I see it for our own military from friends that I've had. They receive the same training, maybe even in a better way to execute what needs to happen. The other thing that I would say is when it's easier to always show a kind of concern for people when you were saying you can't pray for either party. And I want to thank you for being brave enough to share that, because it's always easier to have like charity and concern and care for people when you believe they're in the same boat as you, right? But all humanity is in that precariousness, which is a word that we've kind of brought into the conversations of the heart because it entails a lot of space like that, right? When we go into places unfamiliar, like this is new to a lot of people, we are in the same boat, but this is not something we're used to. And in that sense, we owe each other that loyalty from one human to another. But the last thing I'll say is that when I was saying about remember death, could we even love one another at all if we were not mortal? Did we love fiercely Ukraine before we knew how mortal and fragile they are? And what you said is a little heartbreaking to me because you just humanized both sides because they're also losing their life. I'm sorry I went on. That was tremendous what you said.
So a lot to unpack there. There's like three major topics. I'm gonna have to. Sorry. I'm gonna have to go with kind of what my thinking when I said stand with humanity is immediately I look at myself. I'm a human. I'm human. I want to be humane. And the minute the reason that I said I feel for both sides is because the minute I judge, I am elevating and diminishing. I'm elevating myself as a moral pillar of society, and I am diminishing, let's call it the Russians, because they invaded. They are the aggressor. They are the, they're coming in. They are the attackers. But the minute that I judge, I am the same as Putin without resources or ambition.
Whoa. Okay.
So I have to be careful, and that's why I'm like, I really want to stand with humanity as opposed to, because it falls on both sides. You've got a nation literally on the verge of bankruptcy, Russia, because of one man's ambition. The rest are just pawns on the table. So I have to be careful that I don't become him without resources, because our own will, our own humanity will be judged at some point by other people, by ourselves, by our creator, if that's what you're into. But I have to be careful that I'm not him, them, whatever, fill in the blank, that I don't become what I most despise, because it really is a mirror. And he feels a superiority, an entitlement to the land, to the resources, to the extension of boundaries, to the control. Would I control him? Would I? I don't know. I'll never know. I'm just not that ambitious. I don't have those types of goals. I don't want to be the president. I don't want to run a nation. I just want to run my household. Maybe that's lack of ambition. Could be. But so that's kind of the take that I was feeling, like how dangerous it is to go from feeling empathy and consideration for those being displaced, but how near it is to stand on the other side. You know, just in my own thought process.
Wow, Leroy.
And I hope that humanity, you know, offers me relief in time, because I got to tell you, we talked about vulnerability. I mean, I've made a lot of lousy choices in life. You know, I'm not proud of them. Are they any greater, or are they lesser because I lack the spirit and enthusiasm to do what's currently being done? No, it's still the same will. You know, it's just in my realm, in my scale. But my thought, my desire, my control of something was the same, just lacking the talent that, you know, to lead a nation.
You're just on such a roll with this, because what I'm picturing as you're saying this, when you're like the same as Putin without the means and ambition, and that when you judge, you elevate and diminish. I was thinking, okay, so this is what it gives rise to in me to hear you say that. What's at the base of all this trouble we're seeing? What's the greatest fear of humanity? What's the fear that would make us do such damage? And it's said that the greatest fear of man is separateness, and that we are separate from one another. And so the way that we respond to that fear is different. And I think when we see what's happening in Ukraine, it has a way of stirring that fear within us. It brings it back into focus, and it heightens our awareness that, wow, how quick we could be made separate and squashed. The funny thing is, with what you're saying, Leroy, I have goosebumps. I truly do, because in our fear, we can become really reckless, and to even start to judge is a kind of recklessness and a kind of inhumanity in a way. Once I've heard you say this, because just to give a voice to it and say, damn them for doing this, because this is how we feel. You are saying damn, which is to destroy them, right? Now, I'm a nobody, and no, I don't have the power to do that, but I am a voice. And one of the ways that we try to overcome separateness is in that the easiest way, if we don't do it with the heart, is through conformity. And we can give rise through our fear by saying, well, what the heck? Why aren't we there killing them? And so I could give voice to that, and I could repeat it to 6 people. They can repeat it to 6, and our collective voice rises enough, and our leaders will take note at some point, right? Now, in our conformity and our weakness, because that's our choice, because we don't have the means and ambition, but we have that voice, the murmuring that always gets people in trouble from the Bible onwards, right? The crowd that's murmuring, and it gets louder till it gets to someone, and then action happens. So that response of fear, it gets loud enough, and what would we do? Would we slaughter them? Then who are we if we just said this was a monster or inhumane? That's not a human to do that, but it's very human, because our reaction to fear very easily could mirror what we are witnessing but haven't thought through. But we may also be witnessing what began also as a fear in a man or group, right? Leroy, you've changed my mind on this. I want to say this because I probably was like, what the heck? We are strong too. What are we doing? You've changed my mind, and I'm very stubborn to change, but that's amazing. Go ahead.
So for me to understand humanity, I got to understand, what does it mean to be inhumane? Inhumane right. is without compassion or mercy, no consideration given to the suffering. And yet so many of us would wipe out the aggressors. We'd wipe them out. You just said it. Like, I mean, literally, we're sending supplies, $800 million worth, and then more, and we're sending missiles. We're sending the very same tools utilized against Ukraine to push back in defense, which is we justify. We are using and listen, we are sending these things without consideration to the suffering. We are sending things without consideration to mercy or compassion. We're sending it to fend off. But we're going to, you fight fire with fire.
Right. It seems, and that's no judgment on anybody for doing that, because it does feel right and just. It feels justly right.
It does, but this particular topic today is about humanity, standing
at its core, as an ideal too.
That's right. So it's like
what really happens is different. Yeah.
So it's real easy to become inhumane in the protection of humanity.
My gosh. And before you know it, what you just said, we are fending off. This may be what Putin said before he began his rampage. And
now we go back to a topic a couple months ago about perception. There's a perceived injustice, whether it was, wanting to return to the original map.
Right.
And, that was it. Maybe it's a pride, maybe it's an ego. I mean, we don't know, but there is a perceived injustice and a perceived entitlement. And I want to, redraw the map the way that it was originally.
I want to point out that you mentioned maps last time in the Conquistadors. I do want to point out that ourself here, a lot of times we like to point out how whose name has gone on the map of the place we live on, how that has changed. And there has been so much talk of justice and correcting it. But when we actually see it in motion, it doesn't look too humane. And I'm not saying that what happened was humane, so inhumane, but inhumanity does not ever heal inhumanity. Right?
I think the scary part, and I'm talking about myself. Anybody who knows me, here I am being vulnerable. Humanity is something that we feel good about. But that doesn't negate our wishes, our thoughts, and our dreams. I don't want to get ridiculous here or reveal how crazy I actually am, but just because, we champion humanity doesn't mean that we are that at our core. That's not our spirit. Many of us would wipe out Russia if we could, just based on what we believe. But that is literally...
That is a judgment, a final judgment at that.
Yeah.
That's huge.
What we would wish on them is, it's ugly.
I'm shocked to hear you saying this too, Leroy, because it's, I was going to say because it's so sensible, but it's,
and you could say that.
because it's so sensible. It's so, the way you've just said it is so matter of fact, and dare I say, plainly put. Like, this is the simplest I think I've ever heard it put. What would be wrong with standing with one instead of standing with humanity? Now, can you just tell how this came up? Standing with Ukraine versus standing with humanity and the shirts. This is where what led to today's topic, right?
So Strong Islands got some shirts. They were kind enough and giving enough to want to participate in an idea. The idea was, let's let listeners, let's let people that visit the website, let's let followers purchase shirts that they'll never be in possession of, that we can then mail to the people that left were displaced without any goods, without clothes, without this, without that. And then, somebody could include a little note, and all of a sudden somebody got a shirt, and so we're like, okay, stand with Ukraine. That's that's the initial thing. And I'm sitting and I'm thinking about, right, stand with Ukraine. And I'm
Seems right. It feels right.
It does. But as I look at this, I see how close I am to being the aggressor, like passing judgment, and so that's how I was like, it's really not that. It's stand with humanity, because what they're being asked to do, and they will be awarded medals, like we were saying, they will be awarded medals. What they're doing is they're following orders. They're being loyal, and asking somebody to do something against their faith, against their spirit, against their better judgment. That's as inhumane, if not more, than trying to take a piece of land. I mean, you are literally, under the threat of losing their life or being imprisoned or this or that. You're going to go out and you're going to do something that is just absolutely against your will. And then we're going to make you feel good about it. We're going to give you a paycheck. We're going to arm you, and we're going to probably give you a medal when you get home. Good luck, champ. Be successful.
And it's funny, because if you think about it, to participate in any group or a society does require that there is a duty, I should say, of obedience, right? If you resist that, the thinking is generally, like, if you resist obedience in America, we're seeing it, the common thinking is that you deserve judgment for it. So the poor soldier in the middle, to resist this means to face the judgment of their very own, right? Where they already belong. To not resist means to face the judgment of those that are not their own. When we have to pick like who to piss off in life, it's always easier to pick those we don't have to face a whole lot, to be fair, right? Or those that are the most threatening, or that you perceive will do the most damage to you. But the fact of the matter is, like, if push comes to shove between you and somebody else, there is a naturalness that I think I'd be loyal to a pretty, like, a lot further than people would be comfortable with knowing. So there is a naturalness to that. So what this tells me, Leroy, and I want you to think about this, you can hint at it today, because I don't know, I don't have an answer, and I don't know that you would either. For us to say these are the choices, this implies that there needs to be a third option, because neither of those is going to solve this. We'd have to step back and look at it and say, what's missing from the picture? Where does a solution rest if it's not in listening to your people and exercising what it is most humane, and that is a loyalty to community, to family, to country on some level. Now, a lot of people believe in not doing that, but I'm sorry, from where I'm sitting, if you just agree with the herd that we are not like that and there is no authority, that is also bureaucratic. That's the herd has become your authority. So my thinking is there's no escaping this. So there has to be another choice.
We can't rationalize.
What is it?
We cannot rationalize irrational.
Right.
I believe that Russia as a whole, for the majority, Russia is a very harmony-driven country. Their culture, while foreign, is one that probably includes a lot of teaching children to ride bikes, a lot of family dinners, a lot of beef stroganoff. but and that's not so different from ours.
It's not that long ago that I.
So when you say about choices, we're that's an oversimplification for me.
Okay, I can appreciate that. So tell me,
because for me that's just too simple. That's like saying, well, why on earth would you get behind the wheel of a vehicle when you're intoxicated? 99% of the population doesn't. So you're trying to simplify like it's that simple. It's kind of like people that are dealing with addiction. Come on, just get off of it. Most of society is not, encumbered by, drug abuse. So you can't, it's not that simple to just say, yeah, fix it. I mean, if it was simple, nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to lose their children. Nobody wants, Russia as a whole. They must be walking around utterly embarrassed and terrified of worldly retribution, because that's not the way they live. They
don't feel like who they're being told now that they are by the world. It's like, you got it wrong. No, we're not. Right?
I live in South Florida, have a high interest in real estate, and the South Florida Russian population is liquidating assets like crazy.
How come?
They don't want to have a condo here. They don't want to, it's taboo. They don't want to be at risk themselves. This affected not just the folks in Ukraine. This affected the citizens of Russia.
Yeah, that's amazing.
On a world platform, they literally got a major black eye. And again, these are people that love one another, attend church, have neighbors, plow their neighbor's driveway. There's people that do a lot of good. There's lots of people that do charity. And you know what? And they all got a black eye equally. That's why I think it's important to stand with humanity. Because, man, poor thing, by no action of their own, live their life. Some of the best people, it's not, you're not going to be surprised by who you see should there be an afterlife, but you might be surprised by who you don't.
Yeah. That's
amazing. There's just so many people that they've just lived a good life, and they're great people. And unfortunately, they're suffering the consequences of their nation's leader.
Yeah, and I would add that it's not 6 months ago, not weeks ago, where what we're almost violently opposed to today. I think I heard many people here just really commending this idea of Eastern thought. You'll hear this idea of community before individual, the beauty. And they're not wrong, but it's incomplete to just also, it's a judgment also to glorify a group according to our judgment and say, this is amazing if Americans could be like this. So that's the other end of that spectrum where people kind of glorify Eastern thinking. The thing that we miss out on both ends or both extremes is what it takes to maintain each. They're both pretty messy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the cost of putting community before the individual means, if I still count you as community, we meant it when we said it. And that's not to say it's right or wrong. It's just, again, and this is where what you say about truth, I don't agree with you, Leroy, on it, but I I can't think of another way that makes sense right now than to say this is how truth can change, because in that sense, as an ideal, both seem right. And maintaining both, the cost of maintaining an ideal seems as horrific on either end. And the fallout is horrible. I'm going to have to rethink this. That's all I can say. That's my confession for today. I still stand by truth as truth, but I can't make sense of it.
I just got one of those thoughts. It's like maintaining ideals is a lot less than ideal for so many.
Oh, it's bloody literally.
Yeah, literally. It just is, because
one of the things I always think of when Moses came down from the mountain, as a great work of literature or truth, it's the Jewish book, the Muslim book, the Christian, a massive portion of the world. So I'm going to share it. I always think this guy comes down he's holding the commandments that says, do not murder. His first act upon hitting regular earth again is to slaughter half the people, to draw a line and begin the killing. As he drops the stones and those rules shatter. And the thing is, I've not been able to reach a satisfactory point with talking of humanity today, except to say that my takeaway that I'm going to exercise for the week, as I've been starting to exercise mechanically, I am going to mechanically just work on don't judge. That's the best I can do, because I don't know crap besides that today, right now, after intensely thinking about this for like a half hour, right?
Just so you know, the breaking of the stone tablet is emblematic of the breaking of the commandment. So, because they're one and the same.
So
when you break the commandment, you break the commandment figuratively,
right. Literally and figuratively.
And literally, right. So and therein lies the broken tablet.
Yeah, but isn't that amazing to be saying? And here's the thing, this authority is God himself. If we cannot pass 2 steps into real life away from those ideals, adhere to what we would regard as proper authority, how on earth are we going to adhere to authority among men? We're in a tough spot, brother. Oh my gosh.
So tough. Okay, so next week, I promise all listeners, we're going to do something that is going to be uplifting at a level we have not done yet.
Comedy?
Like, share, I got it all planned out.
Okay.
Like, share, comment, contribute. Don't like, still share, comment, and contribute. And also log in to Tug of Heart and just drop notes. Any chance you get, new topics, things you want to talk about, things you want to hear about, things you want us to share with the audience. Also, Strong Island, check out their page. Bobby's killing it. He's killing it. Lots of exciting stuff. Go on there.
His shows start again tomorrow for those of you here on Long Island. He does a couple. One is a mix-up night of comedy, poetry, art, music artists, and the other is more like a jam session for local bands, Thursdays and Fridays. But you can find that on the site.
So with that, adios. Lori, take us out of here.
Until next time, you guys, just try to pull the reins in on judgment, and whenever we can, let's just be good to each other, because God knows it's so hard to get right in what we don't understand. We do understand, at least those among us, to do the best we can for now, and hope and pray for better. Until next time, please farewell.
Adios.